with JTM Construction.
Based out of Seattle. So my thing today is make tech simple again. You know, you've been here all day, the last couple days, and you've seen just like the cutting edge of technology. But sometimes, you know, it's like data overload. You get stuck, you feel like I have so much to deal with, I can't get it really figured out. I mean, honestly, Autodesk, right? You have so many things, but you're not the master of any of them, so hopefully Autodesk doesn't hear that. So I'm going to start with a little story. So I'm living in a small town called Hohenwald, Tennessee. It's literally a hole-in-the-wall kind of place where you see an Amish community just north of us with a buggy and carriage with horses on the roads, and then you know, we have like a friendly, you know, neighborhood Walmart. But so anyways, I had Bank of America from when I lived in Seattle, and I need to go to bank. We're going to Hawaii. I was like, okay, I gotta go see a teller. So I found, you know, this Bank of America location. It's the closest one. It was an hour away. And so I make the journey there, and once I get there, I kind of have this off feeling. Because I walk up to the door, you see this door, and it has a credit card slide box on it. And I'm like, what? I've never seen this at a bank before. And then you walk in, on the left side, you see ATMs. On the back side and right side, you see conference rooms. But there's nobody there. I'm like, okay, you know, I go to a bank to see a teller, but there's no one there. You know, I'm gonna give it a shot though. I made it an hour, you know, let's try it out. And this is what I see in the conference room. I'm like, this is the most post-2020 shit I've ever seen in my life. You know, hand sanitizer, video banking, so I'm like, this is not gonna solve my problem. I get it's got technology, it's cool, but I gave it a try. So I pressed the red button, and a lady from Austin, Texas pulls up, and she's really nice, and I asked her, hey, can you do this for me? And she's like, no, you're gonna have to go to another bank, and blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, man, it's just so hard when you go somewhere expecting, you know, a service to be provided, especially when it's advertised to be one. Later I found out it kind of says, you know, Bank of America video banking. But, you know, I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of why Bank of America would do something like that. And I think it's relative to kind of what we do when we analyze new software and technology. So for them, you know, did it reduce overhead? Absolutely. If you think about it, you know, that teller can probably go from someone in Tennessee, North Carolina, wherever. And I think Texas has like a lower cost of income. So they're gonna pay someone less to service people, you know, throughout the nation. And then, you know, is it building revenue? It still is. They offer credit cards, loans, you can start an account, whatever it is, you know, it still has that opportunity to do that. And then they're providing some kind of service with an ATM. And then, you know, for environmental sustainability, you know, they're reducing waste. It's a really simple process, building. There's not people commuting, you know, and that's an initiative that Bank of America is passionate about. So if you think about it, it makes sense for someone to think, hey, virtual banking, let's do it, let's try it. But it's just one of those things where it's like, sometimes you need that real human to human interaction, like we were talking about on the panel earlier. And so, well, actually, I'll slow down on that. One of the big things is that they kind of forget about the end user experience. Have you ever been in that spot where you're like, you know, this doesn't actually work for me, and maybe you're not the end user, and maybe they're assuming someone else is, but often it's pretty misunderstood, you know, what kind of experience the end user is having. And if you go and read the reviews about any of these virtual banking locations, it's like 0 stars. Because we do need that interaction and that ability to work together. And I think in construction, you know, we really have a way of needing to work with different end users. So in VDC, in the GC world, my end user is a carpenter foreman in the field. And you give that carpenter foreman an iPad and it's raining, pouring down, and they're supposed to be wearing gloves. Like, I'm sorry, but it's not going to be the best for them. I mean, there are tools, and there's definitely places for that. I couldn't agree more that there's being able to access a 3D model in the field is an immense tool. But for what you do doesn't always make the most sense. And sometimes you have to think about that ExxonMobil is hated on printing a scan, and sometimes there is a time and a place for that. And so that's kind of one of the workflows that I want to talk to you guys about that we do at GTM. But it kind of starts with 3 tools, and it's really simplifying using those 3 tools to the best of our ability. It cuts down on having tons and tons of software that we're not using or fully utilizing. But the number 1 is Revit. I love that tool. But the thing is, with using it, you have to build it in Revit to be usable for the field. We get architectural models, and they're great and they serve their purpose, but personally, I'm not going to send out an architectural model to the field because I haven't created it, I haven't QAQC'd it completely, and the reason that model is being created is for a different purpose than what we experience as self-performed concrete. And so I think that's our job as a GC to really take what their design intent is and make it buildable. I mean, that's kind of why VDC exists in the first place. So this is the work of Anthony Rusati. He's one of my VDC coordinators on my team. And this is what we call a standard self-perform work package. And so you look at all the information that's on there. I mean, there's even a 3D model printed on this PDF, but we will hand this to our field team so that they can have all the information they need at once. And then we also throw this into Revizto, and then they can use the 2D overlay with the model if they want to see more. But if you look at it, I mean, every elevation, how are you going to pull all those dimensions in a 3D space very quickly? And the quickest way you can do that, in my opinion, is still going with the old-fashioned PDFs. There's nothing wrong with using technology that has really served us for a long time. And I'm, a little bit of a traditionalist where I believe that there are things that we have done that make us successful and are simple. You still use a hammer on a job site. Now there's a little bit of a movement for 3D printers. And I think there's definitely awesome uses for that, but I'm not going to go into a tower that was built from a 3D printer. I really don't hope to live for that day. But maybe eventually the technology will get there, and I think that would be an amazing thing. I'd just be surprised if I saw that in my lifetime. So going back to Revit, then these 3 fill each other. So to have that content matter, we have to coordinate it with the other scopes. And the way that we organize our projects is that all of the really high value scopes are modeled. We force it in our contracts. Curtain wall, they're modeling, all of the MEPF, drywall, self-performed concrete, structural steel, you name it. If it matters, if it's getting built, it's got to be in the model, and you have to coordinate it. So fortunately, Revizto Plus came out with this amazing clash automation tool. Any Revizto users out there? Woo, you guys are the winners, I'll tell you that. And if you haven't gotten there yet, I'll say I highly recommend it. I think if you use Revizto, you're less likely to have headaches. Truly, I mean that. Revizto allows you to operate in this space and seamlessly run clash tools. The days of creating viewpoints and Navisworks, I think, are going to be soon out the door with a tool like Revizto. It's accessible to everybody. For once, as a VDC coordinator, I am not the bottleneck of information or being able to create and communicate issues. So that's the coolest thing is that, this is our Avenue Bellevue project. It's a, I think, $450 million job, high-end residential, condos, and hotel with podium and ballroom. A really, really difficult job. A lot of design coordination that we've had to go through. And it shows we've got almost 23,000 issues in Revizto. So if you put $1 to every minute that you would have spent making a clash viewpoint Navisworks, you're gonna pay for Revizto really, really quickly. And it's not just fast for me as a coordinator. With the switchback tool, it makes it really fast for our detailers to just instantly click on the issue. It's in their Revit model, boom, problem solved. We've seen an immense increase in productivity from our detailers and overall coordination process. The other thing is that about 7% of those issues, so like 1,500 roughly, were created by my project team members. So now PEs are working in there. It's not all on me as a coordinator to figure out every issue that we can in the modeled space. And then, so going back to this, the next step is using that with our reality capture data. So we have the RTC360. Who else? Yep, you guys also winners, congratulations. But that has really made it so that we can do things super, super quickly. And then bring that back into Revizto, bring that back into Revit. You also get the HDR images. So for a whole process, it really makes it faster, more efficient, and clearer. So this is our West Tower. It's about 10,000 square feet. They did, I think, 22 setups. It takes about 45 minutes. So we run on really, really tight timelines when you got a dual tower. So each week, you got West Tower, then South Tower going. So we have to make sure that we go really quickly. We do about 5 scans per deck, pre-pour, and I'm gonna forget the rest of them. But the pre-pour ones is the ones I really want to talk about today, because that's where we get to make direct impact on our job sites and do it really, really quickly. So this takes 45 minutes, probably takes about 30 minutes to an hour for our survey superintendent to process, register, clean up the scan, and then get it over to me. And so what I do is I bring it into Revit, and I create a simple PDF deliverable. And so what this does, you can see, it's kind of hard to see on screen here a little bit, but you can overlay our penetration. So I use DWGs in Revit, bring those in, overlay them, throw in the scan, and then we're able to really, really quickly verify every single sleeve in the deck. Because that's kind of baseline. It's really easy to create metrics from this, and I'll talk about that in a second, where you can go around. This is 240 sleeves. I don't know how other people are verifying sleeves for their new decks and stuff like that, but this is just the workflow that's worked the best for us. So I really wanted to share it, because I felt like at GTM it's kind of a small revolutionary thing. I mean, it's like sliced bread. It just all of a sudden made a huge difference in both the way that our projects are successful, but also the trust and belief in BIM and VDC and reality capture. So to be able to do this, I wanted to show you guys some of the key Revit settings that really make a difference here. So biggest one, if you're gonna print scans, you got to set all your line weights to 1. Otherwise, they're gonna have some really thick lines no matter what. And it just helps make it really clear. And then what's funny about Revit is that you can't print a scan using wireframe. If you try to do that, it just doesn't show up, which is weird to me, because you think if you're doing wireframe, you want to be able to see the scan. But so you just change it to hidden line, and then make everything 100% transparent, and then your scan will be able to you'll be able to see it. Yeah, so that's the other part. All Revit content sent to 100%, and then cutting the view range, because we're focusing on sleeves. We don't need to see all the top and bottom bar for this specific workflow. So you can see a little bit of stud rails, and sometimes where the PT cables are coming up, but really it isolates them. And kind of the biggest thing is hey, we're gonna get sleeves in the deck and make sure they're put right, but they have to be in walls, so that's the big thing. And then when you go to print it, kind of a big setting there is using, you want to put it to center, but fit to page. There should be no one scaling off of this document, so it shouldn't matter that much about using that setting. Vector processing, if you select raster, it's going to jump you back to vector anyway, so that's just a small little tidbit. But you want to have the biggest size sheet. I usually go with an ArcD because it's printable. You know, everyone on the job site has access to printing that. But then it just makes it as big as possible. So if you do it on like a letter size, it's going to come out really, really pixelated. So the bigger, the better, the more clear the scan is going to print. And I get, like, it's a kind of a funky idea. Let's take all this 3D content, like literally reality capture, and then put it into a PDF. ExxonMobil people are like, oh my God, why would you do that? But for us as a GC, it works, and it has immensely changed kind of VDC at GTM specifically. So I want to talk about some of the instances where we caught some of these issues in the field and kind of the impact and some of the things that you really see. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, our survey team goes out there, sets control, and then the other MEP subs, they're also using that control and laying off with total stations and you name it. But somehow sleeves still don't make it in the right spot. Or they're missing. I mean, we're humans, we make mistakes. So that's why we have QAQC processes. So this one here, obviously kind of hard to tell. A lot of mistakes on this deck. I mean, this is not even like the first time that we did this. I mean, it's, you know, someone else is laying out sleeves, you know, it doesn't always work out great. But if you had a PE out there checking sleeves, you would have seen, hey, look, I can count 10 sleeves, done, done, done. But they were all at least a ½ inch off. They must have put the control down incorrectly or offset incorrectly. And so what I would have done is put all of those sleeves, you know, right into the JIP. And we work in really, really small margins for these hotels and residential spaces. And that would have had a huge design impact. I mean, you can't, it'd be really difficult to core and drill just to slide them over and try to make them fit. But be able to catch things like that, I mean, there's at least 10 sleeves there, I mean, maybe even more. And then the other thing you can really start to see is where your rebar cages are for your columns. So if they're skewed, you can see that. If they're off, you can see that. And on this project specifically, a lot of these columns, let's see if this laser, it's like this one specifically, it has a really tight clearance to everything else. And we need to know that that's going to end up in the right spot. So you can check slab edge, blockouts, sleeves, core walls, so that's the next thing, well, maybe on another slide. All those small things, and you can do it really, really efficiently using this work process. And then this one, over here, they just, for some reason, forgot to put those sleeves in, and we caught it, we sent them an email, and so that's the thing, once I do this, I go and mark all the checks, and all the circles, send out the email directly to the foreman and all the project staff so they can each have it in their inboxes right away, and then they can take that into the field and then know which ones need to be relayed out. So it's really important for that communication sequence to be really fast. And I haven't found that I haven't used Revizto for it because not everyone is in Revizto, not all the foremen are in Revizto, and it actually takes me more time to fly around each sleeve and verify that it's there and in the right spot versus this is super quick deliverable. But going back to this guy, so this is where we're going to get some of our data. So for that one specifically is kind of where I got this 750 number. This is just this couple months ago. They missed those sleeves, and then they placed them, and then they put them in the wrong spot. And obviously we didn't have the time to go out and scan again to make sure that they did it right, so that's another kind of problem that occurs, but hopefully, you know, we try to capture them in enough time. And that's also a challenge, is sequencing. You have to do it late enough for all the MEP rough-in to be completed, and early enough for the scan to be processed, and then also early enough for someone to go out there and fix the issues. So this one, you know, was rushed, didn't have enough time, so they kind of threw it in there, I guess. But it cost us a lot. And so we have 15.8 thousand sleeves in our one project. So I kind of created this graph. It's really simple, but if you were to get 100% of your sleeves done correctly, obviously there'd be no cost. But if you go to 99%, I mean, these are A++ in school. You go to 90, you're at $1.2 million of spending on correcting sleeves. Like, it's hard because in construction, savings almost don't mean anything. We can talk about how, hey, we saved you guys $1.2 million. And they're like, cool, you saved the owner that. It's kind of an expectation at this point for us to be able to do that QAQC. But anyways, and this isn't even super accurate, because if you imagine you miss 10% of sleeves, or they have to be core drilled or moved or whatever it is, or they're not coordinated to be in the right spot in the first place, I mean, that number goes up so fast. But I think if you added a factor of schedule impacts, this number would even grow. The way that you look to your client, it's going to even grow even further. So that's one of the best things, in my opinion, is that we can show our clients, hey, this is how we're QAQCing this. We're confident. We had one project where we missed one sleeve, and that was just like one of the first times that we did this. And that project actually is why it kind of kicked off this whole workflow. It's like, hey, we missed a sleeve in the deck. Like, what do we do? And we're like, well, we have a scan, and I know where the sleeve's supposed to go, so let's try to overlay it. And that's how this whole thing was created. And now at GTM, every project that we have is going to get this, at least if they're pouring concrete. I mean, even if they don't have very many sleeves or whatever it is, we're going to go there, put the effort in the QAQC process, and save money. And really, I think it's even more, than saving money. It's also about making your GC look better, making, pushing this field team to trust you. Because that to them is super tangible. You can look at that and everybody understands. Versus, sometimes when you're using 3D models and applications and stuff, like, people just say no from the get-go. I mean, they don't want to get into it. You send them all the information, all the models, all the hard work you put into that, and then they're like, can you help me digest that? I mean, that's the biggest thing, is making it digestible, and I feel like we have succeeded in doing that for this specific workflow. But that's all I got. I wanted to open up for questions, but at the end of the day, print to scan, like, it sounds weird, and it's maybe not the most forward thing that you could ever do, but again, go back to that end user experience and have that understanding, like, what's going to be the most efficient for them too. It's not all about the efficiency as me as a BAC coordinator. What's going to really drive my field team to be successful? And this is just one way you can do it. So thank you, everybody.
Awesome, thank you. Anybody with questions? I know we'll take a minute. Some brave soul will step up and walk over here. Mike is right here.
I do have a question. Great presentation, by the way, thank you. I was wondering, how much time are you giving yourself from sleeve layout to actual pour? Because obviously time is a factor, and on a lot of job sites that we're on, we're pouring, let's say 2 days after we're laying out sleeves, just because the time is not there.
Yeah, that's super accurate. I'd say it's usually 48 hours, maybe. I mean, it just depends. That's why we can get this done in 3 hours. All of our sleeves checked, 3 hours. And it kind of works out sequencing-wise if they do a scan at the end of the day. I'm in Tennessee, so I'm actually 2 hours ahead of GTM from everybody else. So they'll have that scan report ready for them in the morning before they even log on. But really, using the RTC, making this deliverable super quick, 3 hours is all you need, and then maybe another 3 hours for them to get that done. So it can happen within an 8-hour workday, for sure.
Okay, great, thank you.
I had a question kind of going back to BIM and the Revit model. When that model comes to you, can you think of any just specific issues that you repeatedly get where you wish it would be in kind of different condition that, is sort of in their purview? You sort of wish it was in better shape somehow?
Well, I do, and I'm not saying anything negative here, I do wish that architectural models did come through with more precise information. And I mean by that, using half-inch rounding annotations. Half-inch makes a big difference to us, or even like wall types that aren't perfectly matched. And we circumvent that by having our framing sub model them per the drawings, and then our MEP team is using those, and then we're going to resubmit them as R5s and floor plans as whatever. But one thing that would be really helpful is if there was a tool that told me if a sleeve was in the middle of a wall. It's kind of hard to clash for that. That would be the one thing that I really wish we had as a tool.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi. I was wondering about when you do those overlays, the scan on the Revit model, how are you aligning? Are you seeing any trouble with alignment? It looks like you did your scans on control. Wondering, are they in like a state plane coordinate system, and do you have your Revit models in a design coordinate system, or are they modeling in a survey coordinate system from the beginning? How are you addressing that delta?
Yeah, you have to start off in the right foot. I mean, you have to get the coordinates to align from the very beginning. Usually, we'll set the grid's property line in our model space and then give that to our survey team, our superintendent, to take care of. And then they just adapt to that. Like, I'm not by any means an expert in being able to capture it all or anything like that, but some of the things that we start to do that helps is not use state plane, because what that does is there's actually a small difference between U.S. imperial feet and U.S. survey feet. So when you have these buildings really far away, it actually created a stretching issue where the building was like really close, but then it was slightly off. So we actually set our coordinates to be 500, 500 at the very bottom left intersection, so that we can start our coordinates in that world and then have everything positive. And that seems to help us, keep things aligned throughout the process. Thanks. Thank you, guys.